All right, color pencil 101. I've got a whole variety here. These are some really fat colored pencils, but it doesn't really matter what kind you use. I'm just going to talk you through some of the basics of using colored pencils. Traditionally, what I would see is students will come in and they will color things in colored pencil, and I get, something quick and colored in like this, where I can see a lot of these speckly gaps of white in the paper showing through. Instead, I'm going to show you how to control your pressure and add layering to make sure there are no gaps. So if I were to compare, instead of that quick coloring in, look like this, I'm going to talk about pressure and layering. Okay, so when I apply pressure, just like kind of we do with our drawing pencils, I can get a more intense color by really filling that in with heavy pressure. So as I go, I'm going to take a little bit of pressure off, just a little bit, and I'm going to keep going back in to kind of infill. But I'm just going to control that pressure as I go, kind of expand this middle tone, darken this a touch. It's hard to control that pressure at first, so I always go back and touch up where I need. And the goal is to be able to see that with one colored pencil, you can get a more intense or a darker looking color that fades to a less intense or a lighter looking color with the same colored pencil. Obviously, if I had this dark blue, I could also use a lighter blue, but this is where I like to come in and layer. I'm not a huge fan of leaving it light like this. I like it completely filled in, so if I want to fade to a lighter pressure with a colored pencil, then I expect you to come back in and layer over top. So an example, if I were fading the blue out to another color, or just wanting to leave it lighter, I'll use an example where I don't go totally dark. I can come back in. This will be a fade out to here. So if I don't want to leave these little gaps in, I can come in with this lighter blue and layer over top to fill it in. So I'm a big fan of using multiple colors and letting those blues blend together to fill in those gaps. So I've got more than one color there. Or I can come in with a vastly different color and say I wanted to bring like a yellow over top of that, blue. Your eyes will do some of the blending for you to fill that in and layer those colors. So I don't want to see any part very thin and speckly and incomplete, but instead layer some of those colors to know that it's filled in all the way, but also it'll give your colors a little more rich or vibrant feel. Okay, so let's apply this to some real things. If I were looking at this frog, for example, I know that, maybe I want it to be green, and I could come in here with very light pressure and just lay in a light green at first over the whole thing. Notice before I even started, I came in and outlined it with pen. You do not have to do that, but that does give me very definitive edges to work from and makes my job a little bit easier with a strong outline prior to starting my color. So I've gone here, I've just given it a very light. No frog is going to be without shadows. So if I start with this, there's going to be some areas that collect shadows. So looking at those, I would say I could go a little bit darker in the areas under the armpits, or a little bit more intense with my coloring. The arm that's in the background might be a little bit harder filled in to show that it's back in the background. I'm going to fade that belly out as well. If I wanted to, this is where I could come in with a different color and show some of these changes. So just by adding a little bit of pressure in the zones I want it to be a little bit darker, I got that effect. But I could come in, with another color and lighten up my green even more up top by bringing some yellow over top of it. You can kind of see that blending effect gives it like a little bit of a glow. So I'll bring some yellow in here on top of the head, maybe in on top of this arm, maybe on top of this leg. If I want to deepen my shadows and take them even darker, I could then come in and maybe go a blue into, just very lightly over top of my green in some of those shadow zones, and that will make it look like a darker green. Just very light with this dark blue, light pressure, but it's a darker color. Kind of gives it the illusion of a shadow. Really take your time. If you color something less than 10 seconds, you're probably not doing your best with colored pencils. A lot of people are used to just using it to fill in color. Anywhere on your page, I should never be able to put my finger and just see one colored pencil at work. I want to be able to see multiple colors coming together to create the blend or the look that we're going for. So now I've got a little bit of lights and darks. I'm fading that out. Fading that out. If you want to come in and add spots or something else, but that's just kind of a quick 101. Even if I were doing a tongue, a lot of people just want to do a pink and call it done. But even then, I would maybe come in with a red or a darker red and show the shadow on the underside of that tongue and maybe fade it out into that to make it a little bit more real. Also go a little darker inside the mouth. Little things like that will help. If I wanted to deepen that, I could come in with a little purple underneath to show the underside of that tongue is a little bit darker. All right, similar things. So I could move on to trees. I can move on to grass. I could do the sky. There's many different things we can talk about. When I think about colors, generally this is how I'll work. If I am taking a grass tone and I want to make a green, I'll normally ask myself what two colors make green. So I should be getting my yellow and my blue mixed together to make my green. And what I'll do is if I lay in a quick grass color and I'm just putting in, just a tone, a zone here, and I'm looking to show lights and darks, that's what's going to make it more realistic. Then what I would need to do is not only show the texture like I've done here, but I would need to come in and show those light and darks by taking the lighter color, and I'll take in the yellow and come in on some of these tips and show some lighter zones and maybe blend in some of this yellow up top to fill in those gaps. But also I want to come in and I'll add in my blue for some shadows, mainly at the base of these, and fade them out. But it's going to give it a little bit of depth and make it look a little more real. I'm using just a very tiny tip to get such a thin line. Texturing in over top of that. But that is a blue over top of a green. If I had a darker green, I could just use that. But I don't, so I'm going blue, but it'll give you more of a blue-green kind of look. So this, to me, is much better. If I feel like the blue is too blue, then come back over with that green, and I can, kind of drown that out if I think it's gone too strong. But I would prefer the variety of color and the texturing to just coming in and giving me this flat green grass that looks like this. Value, showing those lights and darks is always going to make it look better. Final thing, same thing when I get to like a brown. If I'm doing this tree, I'll have lights, I'll have darks. You can come in and show, like based on the lines that you draw, you can show like a bark-like texture, like I'm doing here. But a lot of that might get thrown out in the wash, so normally I will start with just a base light pressure brown to cover the whole thing to get a brown in there, and then I'll come back over top. You can use a variety of colors to go lighter and darker. Normally I think about the colors that make brown. I'll almost always use a red or a yellow and a little bit of black in there. So I don't want to go too crazy, but for my shadowed zones, I could bring in this burgundy and come in and streak some colors in to show this lighter section, but I'm pretty much layering in this red as well. Plan for a light side and a dark side. And since I don't have a black with me right now, after I do in these lighter zones, I'm gonna also come in and do heavier pressure just with my brown. Like the top of the tree that's under this fluff would probably be in shadow. So I'm gonna come in dark here. I'm gonna use this darker brown pressure to create that texture again, or create the illusion of that texture. Gaps in between these roots will be a little bit darker. This side of the tree is gonna be more in shadow. I can just come in heavy, but then kind of break it up and fade it out. So I've got kind of a light side and a dark side, blending that in. If I want to lighten an area up, I can come back in with a little bit more yellow, but it's not going to go crazy dark over that, or light over that brown. But a little bit more balance is kind of what I'm looking for. Make sure that you're using a variety of colors when blending in. If you ever feel like you've gone too far, you can always come in and lighten things up with a little bit of white. But practice using the variety of the colors, and if you got questions, just come back and ask me. Thank you.